Welcome to Soul Stories, where every tale touches the heart and inspires the soul. The afternoon sun hung low over the small-town auto shop, painting streaks of gold across the dusty concrete. Jake wiped the sweat from his forehead, smudging a bit of grease across his cheek. It had been a slow day, just another series of oil changes and worn-out tires. Then, the sound of an engine struggling broke the stillness. A sleek black car, a model far too expensive for his usual customers, pulled into the lot. Jake raised an eyebrow. The car gleamed even under the dust, and when the door opened, out stepped a woman who seemed to belong to another world. She wore a fitted charcoal suit, heels clicking softly on the floor. Her dark sunglasses hid most of her face, but her confidence was unmistakable. Still, there was something gentle in the way she spoke. "Hi," she said, her voice calm but tired. "My car started overheating on the highway. Can you take a look? I really need it fixed before the weekend." Jake nodded, wiping his hands on an old rag. "Sure thing. I'll see what I can do." She handed him the keys, and for a moment their fingers brushed, soft hands meeting rough ones. Something unspoken passed between them. He tried not to notice how polished she looked compared to his oil-stained shirt and worn jeans. As Jake worked under the hood, she lingered nearby, curious. "You've been doing this long?" she asked. "Pretty much my whole life," Jake said, tightening a bolt. "My dad owned this place before me. Guess I just followed in his tracks." She smiled faintly. "That's admirable. Not many people stick around these days." He shrugged. "It's home." They talked for longer than he expected. About small towns and big cities, about music they loved, dreams they never chased, and the strange comfort of finding someone who listens. Jake couldn't help noticing the way her expression softened whenever she laughed. Beneath the designer clothes and the polished exterior, she seemed lonely. By the time he finished, the sun had dipped below the horizon. She stood by the car door, hesitating before leaving. Then she turned to him, her tone suddenly uncertain, almost nervous. "I have a wedding to attend this weekend," she said, twisting her keys between her fingers. "And I don't have anyone to go with." Jake blinked, caught off guard. "Oh?" She looked straight into his eyes. "Would you be my date?" He froze, the world falling silent around them. "You mean me?" Her lips curved into a soft, confident smile. "Yes, you." And before Jake could even think of what to say, his heart answered for him. Saturday evening arrived faster than Jake had expected. He stood in front of his small mirror, tugging at the collar of his only decent shirt, a crisp white one he'd worn once to his cousin's wedding. His hands, usually steady when handling tools, shook slightly as he tried to tame his unruly hair. "What am I doing?" he thought. She's probably used to men in suits, not mechanics with oil under their nails. Still, something about her invitation, the warmth in her voice, the spark in her eyes, had made it impossible to say no. When Jake arrived at the hotel, his heart nearly stopped. The building towered above him, all glass and gold, glowing like a palace under the evening lights. Expensive cars lined the entrance, the kind he'd only seen in magazines. Valets in uniforms opened doors for guests who stepped out wearing glittering gowns and tailored tuxedos. He parked his old pickup truck around the corner and walked in, trying not to look too out of place. The moment he stepped into the lobby, a wave of perfume, chatter, and music hit him. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and waiters carried trays of champagne through the crowd. He was seconds from turning back when a voice behind him said softly, "You came." Jake turned and forgot how to breathe. Lauren stood there in a flowing midnight blue gown that shimmered under the lights. Her hair, usually tied up neatly, now fell in loose curls over her shoulders. Gone were the sunglasses and business-like distance. For the first time, he saw her, truly saw her, and she took his breath away. "You look..." Jake struggled to find words. "Wow." She laughed, a soft sound that melted through the noise around them. "You clean up pretty well yourself, Mr. Mechanic." Before he could respond, a group of well-dressed guests approached. "Miss Lauren, we've been waiting for you," one of them said eagerly. Jake frowned. "Miss Lauren?" The whispers started spreading around him. "That's Lauren Reeves, Reeves Motors CEO. She's one of the youngest millionaires in the state." Jake's stomach dropped. "CO? She glanced at him almost apologetically.
"I was going to tell you," she murmured, "but I didn't want that to change how you saw me." He blinked, trying to process it all.
The woman who had walked into his small-town garage wasn't just a stranger with a broken car. She was one of the most powerful women in the city, and she'd asked him to be her date. For the first time that night, Jake didn't know if he should feel honored or completely out of place. Jake stood awkwardly at the edge of the ballroom, his rough hands clenched together as if he could somehow hide the calluses that gave him away. Laughter and music filled the air, a graceful waltz played by a live orchestra, couples twirling effortlessly across the marble floor. Waiters glided through the crowd with trays of champagne, their movements smooth and practiced. Jake felt like a stranger dropped into another world. Every man around him wore suits that probably cost more than his truck, and every woman sparkled with diamonds. He tugged at his shirt collar, wishing he'd stayed home, wishing he wasn't starting to care about how he looked, or how she looked at him. Lauren approached with a soft smile, holding 2 glasses. "You look tense," she said teasingly, handing him one. "I feel tense," Jake admitted, glancing around. "You didn't tell me who you are." Her expression softened. "Would you have said yes if I did?" He hesitated, eyes dropping to the golden bubbles in his glass. "Probably not. I fix cars, not attend galas." Lauren took a sip, studying him quietly. "That's exactly why I asked you." He looked up, confused. "You talk to me like a person, not a company," she said simply. "Do you know how rare that is? Every day people see my title, CEO, millionaire, boss. You didn't see that. You saw me." Jake smiled faintly. "Guess I didn't realize I was talking to royalty." She laughed softly. "I'm not royalty, Jake. I'm just tired of pretending to be someone important all the time." The orchestra shifted into a slower song, and Lauren glanced toward the dance floor. "Dance with me?" Jake blinked. "I don't really dance." "Neither do I," she said, holding out her hand. He hesitated, then took it. Her hand was warm, delicate, yet sure of its grip. As they moved into the rhythm, his awkward steps began to smooth out, guided by her quiet confidence. The golden lights shimmered above them, catching in her hair like sparks. For a moment, the noise of the world faded away. There were no luxury cars, no suits, no titles, just a mechanic and a woman who'd forgotten how to breathe without expectations. When the song ended, she stayed close, her eyes soft. "See, you fit in just fine," Jake chuckled. "Only because you're the one leading." She smiled, whispering, "Maybe, but tonight, I don't want to lead. I just want to feel human again." And in that moment, under the golden chandeliers, both of them finally did. The weekend ended like a dream Jake wasn't ready to wake from. As he drove home that night, the echoes of laughter, soft music, and her smile played over and over in his mind. It all felt unreal, like a scene from someone else's life. By Monday morning, the garage was back to its familiar rhythm. The hum of engines, the smell of oil, the clinking of tools. Jake told himself to forget about her. She was a CEO, a millionaire, a woman who belonged to a world where he'd never fit. But no matter how hard he tried, her voice lingered in his mind. "You talk to me like a person, not a company." Then, just as he was finishing up a repair, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned and froze. There she was, Lauren Reeves. No expensive car, no bodyguards, no designer suit. Just jeans, sneakers, and a simple white shirt, her hair tied back loosely. For the first time, she looked like she belonged there. "I walked here," she said with a playful smile, noticing his surprise. "Didn't want to make a scene pulling up in a car you'd have to fix again." Jake chuckled, wiping his hands. "Well, I guess that's one less job for me today." She looked around the small garage, her gaze soft. "You know," she began, "I had more fun with you this weekend than I've had with anyone in years." Jake grinned, leaning against the workbench. "Even if I can't afford a suit like yours?" She laughed, a real unguarded laugh that made his heart skip. "Keep your grease stains, Jake. They suit you better." For a moment, they just stood there, 2 people from different worlds, somehow finding peace in the same silence. From that day on, Lauren started visiting more often. Sometimes she brought coffee. Other times she simply sat on an old stool watching him work, talking about everything and nothing. She learned about the smell of motor oil, the sound of a perfectly tuned engine, and the way Jake's eyes lit up when he fixed something broken. And Jake? He learned that even someone with everything could still be searching for something real. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lauren smiled at him and asked softly, "Will you be my date next weekend?" Jake looked up from the car he was fixing, eyes warm with mischief. "Only if I get to fix your heart this time," he said, wiping his hands. She grinned. Deal. And under the fading golden light, two souls from opposite worlds finally met halfway, not as a CEO and a mechanic, but as two people who had finally found home in each other.